Last week I spoke about, and the last 2 weeks, I spoke about the most important concept of analyzing of world economic system. I tried to define the time, the space, the concept of world economic system, and the concept of Euro. We start to speak about the story. How formed economic integration in the first phase inside of Europe, and later after the construction of international trade, and finally geographical discoveries, how integrated Europe according to European standards, the global trade and the global economy. Okay, the first question which we have to answer, the birthday of European civilization. Which is the birthday? There are a lot of different birthdays. It depends on the criteria or criterion of definition of birthday. The first possible birthday of European civilization is a different event of age of migration. The first possible date about this event we spoke about at the end of last lecture, when a nomadic tribe, nomadic folks named Hans, or in Chinese historical book annals and documentary sources, named Xiongnu. It's possible not a good spelling. Anyway, this name Xiongnu because these tribes came from Chinese Wall, the Great Chinese Wall. And very easy to communicate on Eurasia. It's possible that I spoke about in former lecture, very determining a geographical structure of Eurasia compared with Americas. Look at, for example, Eurasia. Size of Eurasia, it's very large from east to west. It's simplification, it's not a geographical map, it's simplification of Eurasia. Why interesting for us? Because the flora and vegetation zone is large, very long stripe. The first one is a tundra, it's a cold steppe area. The second one, a taiga, a pine forest area, and the third one, a frondiferous forest area, and very interesting, recently a lot of news and information there are about Kiev, you know, a capital of Ukraine. And very interesting, Kiev was the first state of Eastern Slavic people, and Kiev historically located to the boundary of forest and the steppe area. It's a trade, a market city, and this was the place of market between nomadic people and the people lived in the forest area. This was the advantage and disadvantage of location of Kiev. Not by chance, the first great Eastern Slavic state was a Kiev Principality, and inhabitants of Kiev in the Middle Ages, in the 11th century, when, for example, in Buda, recent capital of Hungary, lived 1,000 people. In Kiev lived 20,000, huge capital, a huge city. And this was the marketplace, market surface of trade between nomadic tribes, animals, and other the fruits of forest economy. And this was advantage and disadvantage too. Why? Because good place for trade, but fragile for nomadic invasion. And on the time of great Mongolian Empire, when a Mongolian leader decided the fourth great invasion in 1240, and Mongolian organized the invasion against Kiev during winter time. Why? Because when a marshland frozen over, very bad chance for escape. How many people survived after the cruel siege? Original population 20,000, and the number of survival 800. Unbelievable. I hope that recent situation not will similar to the invasion of Mongolians. And Moscow, the recent capital of Russia, rose after collapse of Kiev. Why? Because location of Moscow much better. Inside of the forest area, very far from nomadic people. Okay, but turn back to the story, which happened in the late antiquity and early Middle Ages. When the Huns appeared and crossed on the Volga River, a lot of date there are from the date of crossing through the Volga River. Somewhere happened in the 370s. Some documentary sources wrote that happened 72, others 75, and the third 78. No reliable information. Somewhere in this decade happened the crossing through. And the Teutonic people, later German folks, pushed toward a Western Roman Empire. And Western Roman Empire finally collapsed. Okay. Good. This is the map of early age of migration. A lot of Teutonic people moved everywhere, even Vandals occupied a northern part of Africa. And possible starting date and closing date of antiquity and starting date of Middle Ages are division of empire. It's made by one of the last talented emperor, Theodosius. It's quite long ruling years beside the name of Theodosius. It's very important. Why? Because the last period of empire, a lot of emperors kill each other. Therefore, the average ruling years of the last 2 centuries, 14th and 15th centuries, was 2.5 years only. Therefore, the Theodosius was the last long time ruling emperor. And why so seminal decision was which did by Theodosius? Divided 2 parts Roman Empire, Eastern and the Western Roman Empire. In the modern time, the manager of modern enterprises used the same decision, same technology of management which operated Theodosius. If one factory of one enterprises became too large and very difficult to direct these enterprises, the most important and the best decision, divide smaller part. It's quite general in the modern management. And this methodology used by Theodosius, divided 2 parts. It was a very successful decision. Why? Because Western Roman Empire, it's collapsed for some decades after the ruling years of Theodosius, but the Eastern Roman Empire survived with 1,000 years. 1,000 years. Only troops of Murad II, who occupied Constantinople in 1453, I remember. This is when the Ottoman Empire occupied. 1,000 years later, in consequence of very seminal decision and a very talented decision of Theodosius, eastern part of Roman Empire survived with 1000 years. Okay, it's possible starting date of Middle Ages. And the next one are 410. This was the Sacco di Roma. It's plundering of Rome by German tribe named Visigoths, under direction Alaric I, a king of Visigoths. Why so important for the contemporaries? Because probably majority of audience watched the movie of Gladiator. You know, this is a Hollywood movie about the, you know, who raised the hand? Okay, other students. It's a story about the last ruling years of Marcus Aurelius, and somehow it's not reliable every element, but shows somehow the spirit of last centuries of Roman Empire. And very interesting in the story that armed person, legionnaire, prohibited walking into the city with arms, with weapons. And we can see the previous plundering of Rome happened 800 years before. Therefore, inhabitants of Rome lived in the safe place. It's not possible, because for 8th century, nobody hurted the safety of inhabitant of Rome. And this illusion of the safety destroyed the plundering by Visigoths. And very interesting, the population mentioned some words, some sentences about the population of Rome. In number of inhabitants of Rome was 1.5 million. Unbelievable high concentration of population, high density of population. And very important to mention, until the Industrial Revolution, until the 19th century, no similar size of city in Europe. No similar. But on the time of plundering of Visigoths, the population decreased under the 1 million in consequence of chaos and the anarchical situation. Okay, and the next possible date of starting date and closing date of antiquity, deposition of last emperor. In the late antiquity and early Middle Ages, not so much documentary sources. Therefore, we can imagine the history of the Trump period, like for example, there is a light showing some people, and there is a dark landscape, and we are able to realize the people who are on the late of the documentary sources and the history. And look at this perspective, the history of Romulus Augustus. Romulus Augustus was half German and half Roman. He was the last emperor. And very young people, you can realize he was 15 years old. He was a puppet. He was a political puppet, directed by the captain of Praetorians. It's a bodyguard of emperor and a different group of senators and so and so. And he lived in Ravenna. Why? Because Ravenna located, there is an Italian peninsula. This is the position of Rome, and this is the position of Ravenna. Why moved the court of empire and emperor to Ravenna? Because Ravenna is a port, a harbor, and much easier to escape to the direction of Eastern Roman Empire. But Romulus Augustus, no chance for escape, approached a Teutonic army under direction a German general. He named Odoaker walked to the castle of emperor, and young emperor is very panicked, and Odoaker declared, I ask the gadget of emperor. It's a sword and a crown, and so it's a lot of gadget. I don't know which are, but each of gadget is which verify the position, legitimate the position of emperor. It's asked, and the panicked and afraid emperor it's take. Very interesting event. Nobody killed. Nobody killed. In this period, it's, for example, on the time of plundering of Rome, more 1,000 people killed on the street of Rome. Here, no, any legal operation. And Odoaker walked to the port of Ravenna, found one ship, one merchant vessel under direction of Eastern Roman Empire, walked to the captain and told to the captain, this is the gadget of Western Roman Emperor. Take, bring to the Eastern Roman Emperor with the message, we never would like to elect a new emperor. And after this operation, a lot of new emperor elected in Western Roman Empire and killed each other, very, very short ruling years, but without legitimation. In this period, very important, the legitimation. After operation of Odoaker, no legitimate emperor, no, never. It's possible, closing and starting date. And the last one, the Hijra. The Hijra is very strange in the first approach. Why? Because this is event of birth of Islam, a Muslim world. Why maybe a starting date of Christendom? Why maybe a starting day of formation of European civilization? Because if we are looking at the history of Greek and the Roman civilization, both focused to the Mediterranean basin. If we are looking at Greek civilization, which colonized not only the Greek coastal area, but Sicily, but southern part of recent France, Iberian Peninsula, northern part of Africa, and the Roman Empire followed the faith. It's a cradle of civilization. But after appearance of Muslim civilization, which occupied very quickly the Near East and even the southern coastal area of Mediterranean Sea, look at, a Mediterranean basin became a borderland between two civilizations. On the Greek and Phoenician, if we are starting the first commercial integration, it's a Phoenician, we introduced, for example, the money. Phoenician, Greek, and Roman history, Mediterranean basin was a cradle of civilization. And the civilization, construction of the civilization, very close to each other, to northern Africa and northern coast of the Mediterranean basin, very close to each other. This, almost the same vegetation, almost the same economic construction, the mentality, and so on and so on and so. And it's closed. It's closed. Muslim civilization occupied the southern, eastern, western part of Mediterranean basin, and the forming European civilization moved northward. In consequence of these changes, European civilization became a continental civilization. It's very important peculiarity of European civilization, a continental focused civilization, even until the geographical discoveries of the late 15th and early 16th century. Okay, good. For analyzing historical situation, very important use some middle-level theory. Flexible middle-level theory. My question, somebody know this theory, challenge and answer? Who? Raise the hand. Nobody. It's a greenfield investment. Okay, cheers. Arnold Toynbee wrote a book series about human civilization. Started with Egyptian and the old dynasty of Egypt until the modern time, until the time of British civilization. It's a cultural history basically. And Toynbee introduced some middle-level theory which usable in the Antiquity, Middle Ages and the modern time. For example, challenge and answer, this is a classical, flexible mid-level theory which used later even the sociology and the psychology too. How function a challenge and answer theory? According to concept of Arnold Toynbee, the person, the communities, the folks, and the civilization may happen a challenge situation. Look at, for example, a movie of Gladiator. If you watch the movie of Gladiator, start with Battle of Vindobona. Somebody know which recent settlement is named to Vindobona? Somebody know? Vindobona. Vienna, capital of Austria. But the landscape was a little bit different. If we are looking at situation of Battle of Vindobona, it's a green corner Roman army with cavalry, with archery, with infantry. It's well educated, well trained soldier and a clear map of military operation. Probably you know the name of Sun Tzu, a Chinese general, Sun Tzu. Who know the name of Sun Tzu? Somebody, one person at least. We may communicate individually. Sun Tzu is a first general who generalized the military concept and wrote in the book, I remember the title of the book, it's Art of War, Art of War. And one of the most important concepts of Sun Tzu, that each battle, the result of each battle, 99% of each battle, determined before the battle, before the battle. This is the same situation in the time, in the case of Battle of Vindobona. It's a green corner Roman army, well educated, different groups, infantry, archery, and cavalry, and so and so. Other side, barbarians, very brave people, very cruel people, but without no military plan of operation, no plan of military operation, no. Therefore, no chance for victory. This is a challenge situation. In the challenge situation, according to Toynbee, there are and there were three possibilities. Three, no more, only three. The first one, first answer. The first answer, the classical, the traditional answer, using the traditional devices for solving the critical situation. In the case of Roman Empire, which is the normal devices of solving a critical situation, mobilizing legions and push back the barbarians. This is the classical situation, traditional situation. If function, no problem, solve the situation and push back the barbarians. But some historical situation, it's not work. If we are looking the history of Western Roman Empire, decade by decade, much more difficult to pushing back the barbarians. The second answer, innovation. because the classical devices didn't or don't work. Look at, for example, a Roman army. A Roman army originally based on peasant. It's a peasant army. Therefore, peasant by year, at least 2 periods necessary to go home. On the time of sowing and plowing and the harvest period. But when increased the size of Roman Empire, no option. Going back, majority of the army. Therefore, great innovation, which introduced a general of Roman history, he named Marius, introduced a professional army, a mercenaries. How long the service years of legionaries? Change between 15 to 25. It's a professional soldier. A little bit same the function of the Janizary in the Turkish army. Janizary. It's a professional soldier. And very interesting, in the Janizary, you know which is the Janizary? It's a new army name, it's a Turkish name in the direct translation, used in the late Middle Ages and early modern time. In the education and the training of Janizary, trained for using a sword and different weapons, but beside the military training, learn a civil profession. Why? Because it's possible, even in the first battle, injured and not able to continue the career. It's a genial invention. And learn, for example, a shoemaker profession. And the injured Janizary, who survived but not able, crippled, not able to participate in the military operation and the service, became artisan. It's genial. It happened in the Middle Ages, late Middle Ages. Okay, but turn back to the story. Innovation. Under reform of the Marius, introduced the professional army. We solved the problem, a long war operation. No problem. Legionnaire never would like to go home. And very interesting, who participated in the Legion? There is a HBO series, somebody watched, Britannia. Nobody. And it demonstrates well who participated in the Legion. For who offer a career possibility, allegiance, a military service, underclass people and the immigrants. This was the typical legionnaires. Okay, second, and very important, a role of creative minorities. Look at, for example, a Western Roman Empire. Who were a creative minority in the critical period and the period of the collapse of Western Roman Empire. A Roman Catholic Church was the creative minorities. In the Roman Empire, proportion of the Roman Catholic and the Christian people no more in the heyday and the highest period than 40%. 40%. And somebody know which was the name of people who wasn't Christian? He named a pagan, a paganus. Somebody know? One mean the paganus? Nobody? It's a paganus, Latin word. Paganus mean rural people. Rural people. Why? Because the Christian religion was religion of urban area, a civilized urban area. And when the Western Roman Empire collapsed, disappeared, a Roman Catholic Church saved a lot of values of Roman Empire. Language, which is the official language of the Roman Catholic Church? Latin, a Latin language. It's possible to tell it's a dead language, but it's not really dead. For example, in the Vatican, in the country of official country, it's very small, but official country of Roman Catholic Church, there is a language community, a language commission, which made new Latin words for mobile phone, because in the Roman Empire wasn't a mobile phone, but in the Latin dictionary there is a word for mobile, television and the space shuttle and so and so. And somehow a Roman Catholic Church tried to revitalize a language first. The second one, a legal system, the Roman law. There is a student from the Faculty of Law, no? One of the hardest exam of student of law, this is the Roman law. It's a Roman law. And the basic level of continental legal system in Europe since the Middle Ages, the Roman law. The Roman law survived. And very interesting, the clothes. If you visit in the Roman Catholic Church, look at the priest. The clothes of the priest follow the fashion of Roman Empire. But recently it's very strange because Roman Empire expired. Somehow the clothes and the religious fashion frozen the fashion of the 4th century. This is the same situation. I am Calvinist by chance because I came from the Calvinist area, and in the Calvinism founded in the 16th century. And look at the priest of the Calvinist church, the fashion of the 16th century. It's very strange recently, but it's quite typical that on the time of formation of religion, the priest is using the clothes which everybody. But the traditionality and the saving of tradition, it's somehow it's frozen down. The change, for example, in the clothes. Okay, second, innovation. Second answer, somehow applying innovation solve the problem. And the third, classical try the innovation, it don't work. It's happened with the Western Roman Empire. But look at, for example, this scale on the life of student. Probably you know, there is an exam. This is a challenge. Like, for example, invasion of barbarians. It's a challenge. A classical solving of the challenge of exam, learning. But somehow, learning is not work, and using devices, for example, and using a smartphone. It's not legal, but somehow it's work. And finally, fail of the exam. We can apply this scale for the everyday life of the student too. Okay, but look at the first step. Look at the first step of European economic integration. As I mentioned, in the early Middle Ages, Europe became a continental civilization. A continental civilization which moved, compared with the Roman Empire, into the direction of the continent. The heart of European civilization we can identify somehow to the boundary between Germany and France. Germany and France. Why? Because in this area, the highest the density of population, whole of Middle Ages, highest the productivity of the economy. Therefore, this is the heart area. Even though somehow. Okay. Why so important focusing to the agrarian production? Because if we are looking at traditional society, we can describe the traditional society like a pyramid. In this medieval social pyramid, 90% of population, primary producer, peasant, and only 10% independent from primary production, mean citizen, it's artisan, it's a businessman, a nobleman, or personally member of aristocracy, or personally king, emperor, so and so. Therefore, majority of function of society determine efficiency of peasantry, efficiency of agrarian production. Good. Medieval agrarian revolution described first time one French historian, very famous French historian. I suggest to you, if you have a free time, reading his book translated a lot of different languages. Georges Duby. He published first time the theory of medieval agrarian revolution in the Revue Historique Lyonnais. It's a French historical journal in the middle of 20th century. He identified the most important innovation of agrarian revolution. The first one, heavy plow. The second one, rotation system, 2 or 3 field system, and a new form of harnessing of the horses. A lot of other, for example, horseshoes and so, but these were the three most important innovations. Beside them, a lot of other innovation introduced in this time. Why is so important introduce a new agriculture? Because a physical environment compared with the Mediterranean basin basically different. In the Mediterranean basin, the typical soil, terra rossa, red soil, it's very, very light type of the soil, very easy to plow. Look at, for example, movies about age of formation of the for example, Roman Empire or Christian Church. Lot of movie about the life of the Jesus. You can realize the typical form of the drawing power is a scratching plow, which used in the Mediterranean basin. It's a scratching only the soil, and the draw power in a 2 slaves or 1 cattle. No more. 2 slaves or 1 cattle. Enough to draw the plow. But if we are looking at continental Europe, a continental area of Europe, the typical vegetation are frondiferous forest vegetation, and the soil a brown forest soil. It's very compact, very hard soil. Therefore, had to invent, had to develop a new form of plow. A scratching plow is too light for plowing a brown forest soil. And this is the heavy plow. It's quite modernized. It's a historical picture, which is the most important peculiarity of the heavy plow. The first is the heavy. In the early version of the heavy plow, only some part of the plow was and made from iron, and the majority made from wooden material. First, for heavy nature and the hard, compact nature of the brown forest soil, drought power, which necessary droughting of plow, it's at least 8 to 12 cattle. 8 to 12 cattle. Why so important? It's much more. But if we are looking at peasant husbandry, no peasant, no family had enough animal. Therefore, it's a key event of European civilization. The peasant family had to collaborate with each other. And the mentality of collaboration started not in the political cloud region, in the everyday routines of plowing of soil. Because at least 3 or 6 families had to collaborate with each other, had to find the good compromise for collaboration. It's very important. It's a starting date of European democracy. It's very strange. It happened in the 10th century, in the frame of forming European agriculture. Good. The second question, which folk invented a heavy plow? Two folks developed the heavy plows. Okay, but I have to mention, why enough only one horse for draw power to the plow? It's a very simple and small version of heavy plow, first, and secondly, if we are looking the change of domesticated animals, the size of domesticated animals in the early Middle Ages, it's very small. And the size of domesticated animal, century by century, rise. Because this is the interest of domestication, interest of breeding. Okay, turn back to the slide series. Good. The first nation and the first folk who innovated and who introduced the heavy plow are Slavic people. Slavic homeland we can locate between the Baltic Sea and Carpathian Basin. And the great age of Slavic migration happened in the 5th and the 6th century. And the Eastern Slavic people, Russian, Belarusian, the Dravidian and other tribes moved eastward. The Western Slavic people, Polish, Moravians, Czech, moved westward. And the Southern Slavic people, like Serbian, Croatian, Bulgarian, moved southward. Distributed the knowledges everywhere of the new technology of heavy plow. Moreover, in Western Europe, distributed the knowledges of using of heavy plow via slavery. There is a French student. How have to tell in French a slave? Esclave came from the slave, or English slave. Both came from Slavic. Why? Because German tribes and the early German kingdom would like to follow the lifestyle of Roman Empire. But the lifestyle of Roman Empire necessary gathering slaves. And majority of these Teutonic tribes were Christian. And the Christian people prohibited taking to slave. Therefore, organized a military campaign against the Slavic people who lived in pagan status. And a lot of military campaign organized against the Polish people and the Czech people, Moravian people, and the slaves picking and gathering on the time of military campaign distributed the knowledges of applying heavy plow. And the second possible, it's not interesting, and the second possible source, Khazar Empire. A Khazar Empire, the Khazar folks are Turkish folks, and very interesting empire for the religion, official religion. Somebody know which was the official religion of Khazar Empire?
Shamanism, paganism.
Sorry?
Paganism?
No? Originally paganic. It's a shamanistic religion. But in the 8th century changed to monotheism. Which version of monotheism? It's quite typical. If somebody, some folks, some elite try to organize a well-organized monarchy, it supports, well, monotheism. In the frame of shamanism, there is a lot of god and goddess and so, but much better religious support a monotheism. Which religion, monotheistic religion, elected? No Muslim, no connected to, no Islam, no Christian, no. Which left? A Judaism. It's unbelievable. It's quite strange, because if we are looking at the history of the Judaism, a Judaism based to the concept of elected people. A God elected the Jews. But exceptional situation. This is an exceptional situation. Why? Because in the long war between Roman Empire and the Jews in Near East, a Jewish community lost. And very important consequence of fail of Jewish army, it's distributed on the empire. Jewish community lived in the last 2,000 years in diaspora. You know which is the diaspora. It's scattered communities everywhere. And divided two parts to the Jewish community lived in diaspora. How the name is, it's Ashkenazi, who lived in Christian community, scattered in the Christian community, and which is the other one who lived in the Muslim world. It's, I forgot. Somebody know?
The Yemeni Jews?
I am
From
that.
Yemen?
No. Ashkenazi and Sephard Jews community. Sorry, Sephard. Very interesting the question, crucial question in the history of the Judaism. This is a folk or religion? Folk or religion? And one of the most important arguments beside the religion, that a Turkish people, a Turkish elite of the Khazar Empire converted to Judaism. And very interesting, there are Hungarian students, raise a hand, Hungarian student, not so much. For the Hungarian student, and for foreign student, similarly, maybe very interesting information. A Hungarian tribes, on the time of Hungarian migration from the Ural Mountain to the Carpathian Basin, lived inside of the Khazar Empire. Which elite followed the Judaism. And very interesting, in the 11th century, there were two Hungarian kings with the name of Old Testament, Samuel and Solomon. Exceptional. Never in the European medieval history, no other king from Spain to, I don't know, Poland, who elected a king named from Old Testament. Exceptional. Okay, look at the Khazar Empire. In the frame of Khazar Empire, it's a large empire in this area between Black Sea and Caspian Sea, lived a lot of different folks. For example, nomadic areas, and a lot of Turkish people, lot of Turkish folk who settled down and followed agrarian activity. For example, Hungarian term of garden, it's Hungarian term of the garden, a Turkish, came from one Turkish folks who settled down and followed agrarian activity. Alan, it's the name of this Turkish tribe, Alans. Okay, but in the 10th century, a Khazar Empire collapsed. And lot of people, former inhabitant of Khazar Empire, escaped to Europe. Escaped to Europe. Therefore, there is a theory published first time a journalist who was born in Budapest, but majority of his life lived in London. He's named Arthur Koestler. Published in the 70s, in the 20th century, and the title of his book, there is on the internet, you can find, in the torrent, of course, in the torrent site, is the 13th tribe. 13th tribe. Why? Because officially in Jews' history, in the history of Israel, there are 12 tribes. And according to theory of the Koestler, the 13th tribe was the Khazar. And according to theory of Koestler, majority of Ashkenazi Jews, according to background, Turkish. It's very strange theory. Try to verify with help of DNA reconstruction. Some experiment verified, other not. No final conclusion in this question, but very interesting that it's an open question even now. It's a folks or religion. If some people who, according to tribal background, Turkish, in their case, it's religion. No any connection to the history of Near East. Okay, but according to this theory, the immigrant came from Khazar Empire might distribute the knowledges concerning heavy plow in some part of Eastern and Central Europe. Good. Khazar Empire, important. Okay, the second item of agrarian revolution, a rotation system. A rotation system. It's a basic problem saving the fertility, the productivity of the soil. Therefore, introduced two systems. A two-field system. It's mean a two-field system. Probably in secondary school studies you remember to this information. Two-field system. Half of arable land is place of the winter crop, arable land, and half fallow. It's a grazing land, and change year by year. Why? Because wheat production exhausted the fertility of the soil. Therefore, it's a grazing land because it's shut down by the animals. It's recover the fertility of the soil. The free field system, a little bit more complicated, applied on the area of shortage of arable land, for example, mountain and hilly area. It's a free separation. It's a winter crop, a spring crop, and the fallow, the grazing land, because necessary to save the productivity and the shortage of arable land. And the last one, it's only a peculiarity. It's not a key innovation, only a peculiarity, but demonstrate well a nature of the thinking of peasant, a thinking of the peasant. Why so important? Because a peasant husbandry, not a benefit and profit-oriented organization. Our most important goal of peasants is saving of self-sustainability of the husbandry. One picture about Oktoberfest. Somebody know which is the Oktoberfest? This is the fest of beer in Munich. I stay a half year in Munich, and very interesting fest, a beer fest. It's a global event. Everywhere arrive tourists, and very interesting. For example, it's very popular, the cloth of Bavarian cloth. You know, this is typical with very special hat, and unbelievable walking Japanese tourists on the street. And probably you know that in the Asian people, I don't know which is it's a somatical, it's a stomach region of genetical reason, much smaller quantity of alcohol, enough switch off the bulb on the brain. The alcohol tolerance is more limited in the case of Asian people. I remember the Asian people in Bavarian clothes, in the very relaxed pose on the metro station, and the metro, it's a train, it's going 1 second, third, and then relaxed, and not able to decide walk in to the train. Okay, but this is one horse from Oktoberfest, and you know, you're able to realize, apply owner of coach a neck harness, but very important weakness of neck harness. Very easy to construct the neck harness, but if increase the weight of on the coach, on the carriage, it's choking. Therefore, in the 10th and the 11th century, innovated a breast harnessing. Much more complicated construction, but increase the draw power of horse, it's a double, because it increased the carriage weight, it's not choking the neck of horse. But very interesting, look at the case with buffalo or cattle or cattle couple. In the case, even though, not only in the Middle Ages, even though when using for plowing a cattle or water buffalo, like in this picture, even though use a neck harnessing. Why? Because in the case of cattle and the buffalo, there is a bone, a neck bones. Therefore, neck harnessing not slide back and not choke the neck of buffaloes and the cattle. Why interesting for us? Because demonstrate well, if not necessary, using innovation, which very expensive and very fragile, because a lot of different points may be wrong, never introduce innovation. Even in the 21st century, I visited in eastern part of Romania, it's Moldova, and 3 years ago, I saw applying a neck harness, because the peasant economy tried to minimize expenses, and not necessary change, never change in the traditional society. Okay. Look at the consequences of agrarian revolution. If we are looking at consequences of European agrarian revolution, very important compare with the global subsistence systems. If we are looking at global history, we can identify three cereals on which based civilization. The first one, wheat. This is the European civilization. If we are looking at the antecedent of European civilization, the Roman and the Greek Empire. The second one, rice-based civilization. It's simplification, but this is the Asian civilization. And the last one, the maize or corn civilization. It's very, very high the temptation take into the list potatoes, but potatoes not enough for forming a subsistence system. Potatoes, each civilization in the modern time somehow it's complementary. It's a complementary plant, not dominate the food, not dominate the agrarian production. Okay. We can compare these cereals according to three aspects: labor, productivity, it means a yield, and soil effect of the plants to the fertility of the soil. Look at first wheat. Productivity, labor, the first aspect. Heavy work necessary only in two periods. Plowing, sowing, it's in October, generally, in Europe, and harvesting in July, August. Any other period not necessary to work. Therefore, in Europe, for peasant, a lot of free time. Look at, for example, a Christian calendar. In the Christian calendar, had medieval Christian calendar 120 feast, free time, free day. And if we calculate with the Sunday, it's an official vacancy, half of the years not necessary to work. Therefore, very important peculiarity of the European continental civilization, a lot of free time for the peasant. If we are, for example, reading a fairy tale which wrote in the 19th century, our impression is a peasant, is work day and night and everything. It's not true. In the traditional time, a lot of free time. Okay, look at the productivity. One seed able to produce 4 to 10. It's a critical element of European civilization. Why? Because if we are looking at this productivity, very, very moderate productivity, one produce 4 to 10. One seed necessary to pay to king. One seed necessary to pay to landlord. One seed necessary to pay to church. One seed necessary to save to the following years as sowing. How able survive European peasant? The solve and the answer and the solving of this paradoxal situation, a common used land, a common used grazing land, a common used forest, a common used lakes and the rivers, because this large part of the landscape, the village community used common. Look at the forest. In the forest there is a lot of edible fruit, edible mushroom, edible animals. In the lakes and the river there are a lot of fishes and turtles, a lot of edible animals. And on the grazing land, common used grazing land, it's a place for the animals of the peasant husbandry. Therefore, the living standards of peasant husbandry depend on the size of common used land. Therefore, before Industrial Revolution, Eastern European peasant lived much better than the Western European peasant. Why? Because density of population eastward decreased. Not the arable land was the key of the survival, but the common used land. Okay, look at the soil effect. Soil effect. A wheat, it's exhausted, totally exhausted the fertility of soil. Therefore, 2 following years not possible to produce on the same soil. Necessary to wait 1 year for recover of fertility. The most important consequences of this bad nature of wheat, low productivity, but exhaust the soil, in Europe until the Industrial Revolution, very, very low density of population. Look at the global comparison. In Europe, in the Middle Ages, the highest level of density of population, low countries, Belgium and Netherlands recently, low countries, this was the contemporary name. It's 50 person per square kilometer. On the same time, in China, on the area of southern capital of China, named Nanking. Northern capital is Peking, but southern capital Nanking. In this area, density of population 300 person per square kilometer. Look at, for example, Americas. In Tenochtitlan was a capital of Aztec Empire. In Tenochtitlan, on the area of Tenochtitlan, recently located, destroyed by conquistador and located and founded Mexico City to the place of Tenochtitlan. A very bad location, but it's not very unhealthy environment. But on the time of Aztec Empire, density of population, it's 450 person per square kilometer. Therefore, in global comparison, Europe, low density of population. But which is the advantage of low density of population? In Europe, very high the price of living force, and very open for technical innovation, because not enough work power. Okay, came from special nature of we. It's not geographical determinism, this is an obvious conclusion. Okay, look at the rice culture. There are a lot of different way of production of rice. There is a dry rice production and there is a wet rice production. The most typical and the most efficient, the wet rice production, and the product necessary a lot of handwork, because the plants necessary to make before the sowing and necessary to work, hoeing and cleaning and so on. A lot of handwork. For example, looking at a landscape of a rice field, a lot of peasant working somewhere, a lot of handwork. But productivity unbelievable high. One seed able to produce 30 to 50. Moreover, a subtropical area, it's possible 2 or 3 harvests per year. Therefore, high density of population, obviously, based high productivity of the rice culture. Moreover, for using a natural fertilizer, the rice field able to save the fertility for long term. Look at the maize, the corn. For corn or maize production, American culture based to the Central American culture, based to the maize and corn production. It's 50 days work necessary, but not so much, because whole of the years there is a 365 days. 50 days not so much. I spent my childhood a small village, a small traditional village, and the hoeing of maize inspired to my scientific career, because I would like to avoid any places there is a hoe, and in the university not necessary to hoeing on the maize field. Not so much of work necessary for mass production, but very high the productivity. One seed able to produce 30 to 50 seeds, quite similar like the productivity of the rice culture. And exhaust area of production. Look at the social and economic consequences of free civilization maintainer grades. Okay, look at the social consequences. The first one, look at the wheat-based culture. The first consequences are proportion of 80 to 20. 80 to 20 proportion mean in the traditional wheat-based culture until the Industrial Revolution, everywhere, should to be 80% peasant, primary producer, only 20%, this is the highest proportion which possible. Independent from the nobleman, artisan, citizen, independent from the primary production. No more, no more. Some area, even in medieval Europe, rose to half of population bourgeoisie. Why? Because organized in the Low Country, for example, Netherlands, organized the import of grain. Therefore, its local situation able to change the 80 to 20 proportion to 50 to 50. But in consequence of import, in European scale, until the end of Middle Ages, until the end of traditional time, 80% of population should to specialize to primary production, only 20%. It's a close situation. A low density of population, as I mentioned, and high sensibility for technical innovation. If possible, I told to you that majority of great innovation, which invented in China, magnetic compass, gunpowder, the printing machinery, invented in Asia, but the great career, it's run in European civilization. Why? Because in China, based to high density of population, the problem solved. For example, with great organization of great army, the great infantry. In Europe, low density of population, it shows a great perspective in the development of the gunpowder and the musketers. Balanced nutrition is very important because in Europe, in consequence of bad nature of the wheat culture, the proportion of animal husbandry is very high, very high. Probably you know there are two types of starvation. Quantitative starvation, not enough calorie, and the qualitative starvation, not enough fine element of the food. For example, trace element, it's a vitamins and generally the most how the name is nutrition. For example, and the reaction of the body for starvation, became more sensible for sickness. Very important to mention, nobody died in the Middle Ages for famine. Nobody died for starvation. Only the starvation weakened the immunity, and the killer was a different epidemics. Different epidemics. And Europe is quite balanced nutrition. It's peculiarity that carrying capacity of plant farming was a 5, and carrying capacity of animal husbandry 1. Therefore, on the period of overpopulation, it's changed the proportion of plant farming, animal husbandry, but never disappeared animal husbandry, because without animal husbandry, no soil fertility recovery. Okay, look at the rice and the maize-based culture. High density of population, as I mentioned, both cases, America and Asian civilization. Low sensibility for technical innovation, not by chance, gunpowder ran the career in Europe, but invented in China. Qualitative starvation. How react the body to qualitative starvation? Decrease the size. If generation by generation, leaving the generation in starvation, decrease the size. There is a simplification, it's a prejudice that the Asian people is short. It's not true, it's not genetic reason. Tallest man, look at the Guinness Record book, tallest man, Chinese. It's not genetic reason, but it's It's a changing of, in consequence of starvation. For example, when reconstructing a Hungarian size of Hungarian population, on the Hungarians on the time of conquering of Carpathian Basin was 1 meter 70 centimeter, like recently, because balanced nutrition was. But in the Middle Ages, a Hungarians was 1 meter 60 centimeter. Or for example, I spent my child to the small village, and when I walk into the building, which constructed in the 19th century, the doorway so short that I have to move my bed down, my head down. Why? I am not a basketball player. No, it's a quite not small, but it's a quite middle size. Not a evil carpenter constructed this building. The size of the generation much shorter. Okay, qualitative starvation and low importance of animal husbandry. Look at, for example, a classical Chinese or classical Japanese cooking. Chicken, duck, pig, and no more. It's a classical Asian. Why? Because no place for large animal husbandry. For example, if necessary for the cavalry of Chinese army, the trader of emperor moved to the boundary and bought horses from nomadic people. Because inside of China, no place for large animal husbandry. So efficient, the rice culture.